And so, here we are, Moffat's final episode. Part of me's gonna miss him being around, even if his era's felt so fucking long that it could probably be referred to as several eons without much cause for an accusation of macho exaggeration. I was originally thinking about using this website that I found that measures global birth and death rates to try and guess at the amount of people who've died during Stephen Moffat's period as showrunner, and using that as a running joke in this review, but figuring that out probably would have taken something like 50 fucking years, which as we all know is approximately 2 Stephen Moffats if we start using his era as showrunner as units of a measurement of time. Okay, yes, fine, my jokes at Moffat and his fans' expense have gone well past their sell-by date at this point, and it's probably just as well that it's over now. Anyway, I wish him all the best in his future endeavours, really, I really do. I'm being totally honest when I say that I'm interested to see what he's up to next, as I felt that his showrunnership on Doctor Who and Sherlock have been restrictive to his obvious talents, and it will be interesting to see what he does without the net of a big franchise to hold him steady. Anyway, here we go, Twice Upon a Time, one last stab at it. I've had to try desperately hard to keep a lid on my hype for this one because baiting us fanboys with the return of the First Doctor is either the best idea ever if it turns out to be good, or the cruelest thing ever if it turns out not to be. Okay, stay calm, Stuart, stay focused, hype at bay, no gibbering like a 5-year-old, let's watch. Well, that was, yeah, it was very, wasn't it? It was pretty, oh fuck, I was dreading this happening. Okay, these are the most difficult reviews to write because aside from bits and pieces of wispy nostalgia, I was left pretty damn cold by Twice Upon a Time. And the reason for this I can put squarely down to one thing. Stephen is clearly not a huge fan of the Hartnell era. Which isn't a sin, by the way. I'm not calling him out on this for not being a proper fan or whatever shit people sling around the internet. Look, be realistic. We can't all be as big a fan of every era of Doctor Who as we are of our favourite bits. They all have their own unique flavours. Each era existed in its own context. Maybe you like the style of the Fifth Doctor's era. Maybe you like the Base Under Siege stuff with the Second Doctor. This thing's got 5 decades worth of canon for you to play with. No human being can hold an equal amount of affection for every corner of it, and expecting anyone to is totally unreasonable. But just watching the way the First Doctor was used in Twice Upon a Time, something felt really off to me. The First Doctor always used to be this sort of distant, omniscient-seeming figure. He always had this cool air of detachment. Even in stories that weren't very good, I always appreciated his presence because he always seemed to just know something more about what's going on here than anyone else. But the capacity he's used in Twice Upon a Time is essentially the 12th Doctor's companion. Okay, that's not what a multi-Doctor story's for, and it's especially, when setting this alongside the 5 Doctors, totally not what the First Doctor's for. In Twice Upon a Time, he's essentially just there to just ask questions and go, "What is going on? I do not understand." When that's just not who he is. I mean, I kind of get the thinking behind it and what someone would assume if they're not that familiar with the First Doctor. Okay, he's the first one. He's supposed to not know as much. But that's thinking about aging from our human perspective. He's an alien. He doesn't have to not know as much just because he's younger. You can think your way around those corners. And if you do, it actively improves the experience of watching the First Doctor in those old serials. He just doesn't make any sense in this type of role. Said role feeling as though it was written for the companion. It just seems to me like Bill was meant to be in this role and he was meant to be in Bill's somewhere earlier on in the drafting of this script. Then they got swapped somewhere along the line, and no one seemed to think that this story started to look kind of odd considering what First Doctor fans like me know that this Doctor's like. I mean, if it's pretty obvious that Moffat's not the biggest First Doctor fan, that begs the obvious question of why he'd write a special where the First Doctor returns in the first place, when I'd say that Mark Gatiss, for example, would be much more suited to writing this type of story, because upon watching An Adventure in Space and Time, it is stupefyingly obvious that he's a big fan of the Hartnell era. But then you get to the obvious point of this being scheduled to be the 12th Doctor's final episode, the showrunner's leaving, it's a Christmas special, everyone expects it to be written by the showrunner because of, precedent and shit. We had all of that complicated bullshit in Time of the Doctor about 12 being the first first of a new regeneration cycle. We've got the perfect recasting of the first Doctor. Everyone was probably expecting the show to do something like this at some stage, and if they didn't, we'd probably all be drawing a massive red circle around David Bradley and calling it a missed opportunity. A return of the first Doctor for the regeneration story for 12 was almost inevitable, given that everything's just sort of randomly lined up neatly and had fallen into place, and the only missing piece is the first Doctor being written with any kind of understanding or enthusiasm, and Moff's clearly not his biggest fan, so the equation just doesn't work at all because of that. That was crucial. It's not David Bradley, he's fine. His character just doesn't feel right. It's not just the out-of-place sexism and xenophobia that other people have noted. It's pretty much everything about his lines and role in the story that just indicate Moff not really being familiar enough with the first Doctor to be able to write him well. Although yes, like everyone else, the casual sexism and xenophobia did stick out to me. I mean, sure, everyone always says that the early 60s was a very regressive time and that everyone was racist and sexist back then, and there was a ton of that, yes, but it was never really that prevalent in Doctor Who. You can't just associate the two because of when it was broadcast, and that appears to me to be what Moff's done here because he's not that familiar with it. While early Doctor Who was never really that progressive, I don't remember the first Doctor ever seeing his female companions as housekeepers by gender designation. I mean, there was the odd line or two here and there that make you grit your teeth by modern standards. I mean, yes, the jolly good smack bottom line is a direct quote from Dalek Invasion of Earth, and there were undertones in the arc that were a bit dodgy, and there was that one time that someone said the N-word. Okay. Point is, while there was some of that stuff that we associate with the past in the first Doctor's era, it wasn't anywhere near as big a part of it as was made out to be in Twice Upon a Time. This just really isn't an accurate depiction of the first Doctor to me at all. Okay, I know I haven't talked about anything else yet. There is other stuff here, but that's the problem. Twice Upon a Time's entire appeal is built on the return of the first Doctor, so much so that he's pretty much eaten the rest of the episode. Previous Christmas specials have used the fact that it's Christmas and everyone's in a good mood anyway as a crutch to get away with lazy scripting, while other less than stellar outings from Moff have used references, fan service and nostalgia as a crutch. And this one uses both, but it fucks up the second bit because the perspective that it's been written with doesn't seem to be one of nostalgia for the first Doctor's era because it's just not Moff's forte. The opening in particular was pretty damn terrible and pretty indicative of this. The whole previously on Doctor Who 709 episodes ago, and the captions basically just telling us the setup for the story, it plays out like a Cliff Notes remake of the end of the 10th planet that just assumes that we know the context and are invested in the first Doctor's regenerative process. But if you knew the first Doctor and were invested in his regenerative process, you'd be going, he doesn't want to regenerate? Really? But the first Doctor was the cool one. Okay, what I used to like about regenerations was the acceptance of death as an inevitability. There was none of this whole I don't want to go shit and endless whining about it. Time Lords have a different relationship with death, a different understanding of it as not the end, but a new beginning. That always made sense to me, and I always thought it was kind of beautiful in its own way. Drumming up the tragedy and the drama of the death of a Doctor actively takes away from the experience for me. It's approaching death from a real-world understanding of it. He's an alien, he approaches death differently. This clash between my understanding of Time Lords and regeneration coming into mind directly throughout the runtime also took away from 12's regeneration itself for me, which everyone else seemed to love for some reason, whereas I was just like, that happened. I mean, it just didn't really seem all that special to me. He's made speeches before his death before. The 12th Doctor's made big bombastic speeches like this all the time, and the last two regenerations were exactly like this. It's always got to be this most massively important thing ever with an entire hour leading up to it, and you know the massive climactic scene where the TARDIS sets on fire and the music crescendos is coming, so you're basically just spending the episode waiting for it. I don't know, just nothing surprised me. It played out exactly how I expected it to. It just looked like an average regeneration to me. In terms of everything else about the episode, there's a few half-baked but decent-ish ideas here and there. It's a bit directionless at times, but the idea of an alien spaceship flying around removing people from their point of death, it's a nice concept, even if it is openly cobbling together recycled assets from past Moffat specials, Dark Water in particular, but it does mean that we get a decent fish out of water character as a result of this. Mark Gatiss is definitely my favourite thing about the episode. The couple of monologues that he gives are really bloody beautiful, and he sells the hell out of them. He paints some really powerful and visceral scenes of the backstory of this World War I soldier caught up in time at the supposed moment of his death. Oh, and having time stop on the battlefield right at the moment that it looks like he's about to die, that was just gorgeous. And now that I think about it, I would have preferred it if the episode had been built around Mark's soldier character. I mean, think about it. A soldier from World War I about to die, taken out of time by aliens and running around this creepy castle-like spaceship with a bloke called the Doctor, trying to get back to where he knows he's supposed to die and come to terms with his inevitable death. A proper low-key regeneration story with the regeneration itself being incidental to it rather than the impetus. That would have been great, you know, real Caves of Androzani type stuff. You could accuse it of being a bit fairy tale when it gets revealed that it's not actually his death, it's the start of the famous winter truce, but this is one of those cases where I think letting it slide because it's Christmas is fine because, well, yeah, it's Christmas, and it was sweet, you know? You know, they all start singing carols in their respective languages, and it doesn't undercut the dramatic weight of it all to me because, think about it, Mark's character is probably about to die in this war. That was why the story of the Winter Truce where the soldiers played football was so bloody moving to begin with, and using it here is a marvellous idea, and it really makes sense. It just seems to me that the episode was just built around the First Doctor just because everyone expected it to be, when it really should have been built around Mark, who I fucking called it the second I saw the trailer is an ancestor of the Brigadiers. Mark's so good in this. That's probably what's caused my opinion of this episode to just be meh overall, rather than shit and throwing my toys out of the pram, because he is really bloody good. In fact, I don't know why he's not a bigger name actor than he already is. I mean, Karen Gillan's gone Hollywood, can we have Mark next? I'd really like to see him in a leading movie role one day. Anyway, since I just mentioned undercutting drama, let's talk about Clara coming back briefly. I fucking called it! And giving the Doctor back his memories of her somehow. Say, does anyone remember the rather limp sacrifice of Hellbent where he brought Clara back from the dead? She's alive again, but the Doctor doesn't remember her. Well, even that's gone now. So now there's even fewer consequences for using time travel to stop someone from dying than there was before. So now, Hellbent's retrospectively even shitter than it already was. Fucking how? I didn't even think that was possible. Ooh, I got an idea. How about we smack it with this hammer until it's fixed again? Oh dear. No, that's worse, isn't it? Sorry. Anyway, I think that's about it. While Twice Upon a Time wasn't the worst thing ever, it's got some stuff to like about it, and I think there's a pretty brilliant idea buried inside of it that wasn't allowed to flourish in this case because of the exterior factors of the regeneration and big names leaving. It's a shame, this could have been a classic, but it just wasn't. Anyway, now that the 12th Doctor is dead, his spirit ascending to the skies, and it will join with the vast, endless entity in the heavens, known as Stephen Moffat's massive, ginormous brain. A being so huge and profound in complexity. Stephen Moffat's massive brain is you. It is me. It is everyone. Its grand, fleshy, cosmic machinery envelops the entire universe. We love you, Stephen Moffat's massive brain, and all your complex calculations. All hail the mysterious being. The supercomputer of living flesh.